Okay, people are coming in. So we've turned on the sound so that the people who are entering, I see that there's about 30 so far. We're expecting to have over 500 people in attendance today. And our speaker, Esther, who was supposed to be in Philadelphia, which is where she lives and works today, is in Dallas, and she has a lovely story to tell us. So I thought we should take a few minutes for anybody that's early, because I want to hear the deets. Tell us the deets, the crazy
Okay.
day.
It was such a crazy day. So I went to San Diego for my birthday, but also to visit my stepson in San Diego. And we purchased this ticket that has a stop in Dallas. And it was one of those like budget airline. Um, you get it. I don't know if I should mention the airline. But then they got delayed. We're supposed to fly out from Dallas to so the trip from San Diego to Dallas was fine, and then it was smooth. And we were told that they're just gonna clean out the aircraft. We're gonna get on the same aircraft and go back to Philly. So we were supposed to fly out from Dallas at 3:30 p.m. Yesterday afternoon. And then they said that there is some maintenance going on. They needed more time, and the flight somehow got delayed to 5 o'clock, and then to 6 o'clock, and then to 7 o'clock, and then to 7:30. So at 6, I was telling my family, "Oh, let's go grab some dinner. We are likely to not get back to Philly until like really late at night." So we went to a TGF Fridays and got some food. And then at like 6:50, I told my partner, "Hey, why don't you go to the desk to make sure and check up on the flight status." And then there was this you know personnel from the airline saying to us that the flight got delayed until 8:01, and it's so specific. I remember it's 8:01. And then I kept checking on my phone. I was like, but I don't see the change. It doesn't tell me that the flight is changed to 8:01. And by the time it was like 7:25, I was like, maybe we should just go back to double check. And then by that time, they changed to a different gate number. And then by the time we went to the new gate, they said that the aircraft was gone. So
You mean they
I,
left
I was
without you?
no, they flew, they took off. And
That's horrible. Oh
and
my.
they were like, "Yeah, you just need to go to the ticketing center." And then we went out to the ticketing center, and then they said something like all the direct flights to Philly are fully booked until Saturday. And then I was like, "Oh no, I need to get out." And then we went to different airlines, and we just pay so much money to get flight out today. I don't even want to mention how much money we're paying, but it's just ridiculous. But we just wanted to go home. We just wanted to be there. And I will I really don't think I would do another budget airline situation because it's not worth it.
Because it didn't really save you any money when it come down to it, right?
Nope, not at all. Not at all. And it was so hectic because we were trying to look for a hotel, and then I booked the hotel, but it was for a different date. So I made the mistake. And then once we get there to that other hotel that I booked, supposed to be for today, but I wanted for it to be last night. They said that they are fully booked last night. And so we were sitting at the hotel lobby getting a room for a different hotel. It was just chaos.
But
But I have to say, like, we got a hotel room at the end with my family. The bed was amazing.
Oh, good.
So yeah, and the weather is good here. And we got a flight back to Philly this afternoon.
Well, that's the good part. I'm glad to hear that, Esther.
Thank
And
you.
I understand that your husband and your young daughter, now, how old is she? She's what, 6?
She's 7. She's
7.
turning 8 in April.
Oh my goodness, she's getting older.
Yep,
Um,
she is.
And so they're playing, they were very kind to Esther and gave her the room so that she could do this webinar with us today. And they're off playing Pokemon. Now, where are they doing that?
They're doing Pokemon Go in the surrounding area of the hotel.
Oh, okay, okay. And so do we have any Pokemon Go people here with us today? I was just curious. Can you see the chat, Esther? I'm not.
I am looking at the chat right now. I'm seeing a lot of people from different places, mostly like Delco, and a lot of Delco people, Berks County, a lot of Pennsylvania people,
Oh,
Harrisburg, Franklin
Adrian
County.
is telling us that she plays with her children. And
It's
Melanie said that they enjoy it with her children and husband too.
yeah, it's a really neat thing. I mean, when you can walk around and you find the gems, like just walking around in certain areas, and it'll tell you like normal people don't see anything, so you have to be attached to the app to see these things. But they go to these virtual gyms and they fight the Pokemon and do all of that.
oh,
Yeah.
It's a
I don't know
very
how
interesting
I've gotten
thing.
this far in life and I don't know about this, but I'm glad that I found out and I'm going to have to get that app and go do this because this sounds like entirely too much fun.
Really
Yeah.
good exercise.
Oh, yeah. And it's good exercise too. Walking exercise for kids.
Yeah, they told me that my daughter told me that different types of Pokemon would show up depending on the weather. So when
Oh,
it was raining, you get the water type. When it's like cloudy, you get the fairy type. Like they update it according, like in real time, which is pretty cool.
nice. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, well, that sounds like fun. Well, even though Esther is in Dallas and things didn't work out as she had hoped, which in today's world is not much of a surprise with the airlines, I could tell you my own story from last summer where I was running out of breath. That somebody wanted to call me an ambulance because I was trying to get from one space to the other as they kept changing where the plane was going to leave from. And it's just, I used to love to fly. Now I hate it. Ah, anyway, she's with us, has a computer, thanks to her husband, and had access to all of the resources that we needed for today in her PowerPoint, thank goodness. And so I'm very happy that in the end, I think we're going to be just fine. And it sounds like the internet is strong enough that it's not going to be a problem for us today. We did have a problem with one of our speakers once from a hotel room. And so I think it all is working out for us in the end. And I thank you, Esther, for your patience and being with us today.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
we've got 225 people that are here so far and another few minutes to let people come in. So that's good too. And it's moving too fast for me to read some of these. So we've got people from around the state, but what I also like is I saw one from Olympia, Washington, which is the other side of our country. And I personally love that we have people from all over. We haven't had anybody from outside the country for a while, but we have a group from down south. We have people from around the country who have become involved with us, who are interested in our topics. And for those of you who may be new to these webinars, Esther, I was very fortunate to find, yes, the microphones are muted, and we'll talk more about that later. But I found Esther in an article one Sunday. I was curled up with the newspaper and I thought, this sounds like a very interesting woman. I wonder if I could track her down. And sure enough, I could because of the work that she was doing that was so much a part of like what we're doing. And I'm not sure, but Esther, I think this is at least the 5th or 6th time that you've spoken with us, and you've represented the Asian community for us. And I can say without a doubt that there isn't a time that we all haven't learned something from you. And we've come at different angles too, which I've very much enjoyed. You're not talking about the same thing, that as you grow, so what you're teaching us is growing. And something that I think is important for all of us is that if we learn something, we should share. And Esther shares. And she started this new business now to be able to share even more. And I am thrilled to have her today. And all of the people that are coming in and saying hello to us, and Adula. Ooh, I like that.
All right.
And this is going to be officially, and I know I can hear Jamal wants to start, but I just want to say this is officially the first time that we've done a 2-part webinar. So I would think by now everybody is aware of that. If you've registered, you've read that. And so I'm very excited about that. And I'll see if this is something that we maybe, I think we're still going to be around next year. And if that's the case, then maybe this is something that we'll add to our repertoire next year, is a couple of 2 parts. So Jamal, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our virtual speaker series provided by the PA Care Partnership in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Today's webinar topic is Racial Healing with Mindfulness, a different approach to implicit bias. This is a part 1 of a 2-part series, like Nancy said, and I will now turn it over to her to introduce our presenter.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. There are still people coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce Esther and tell you a little bit about her. Esther is a mental health and social justice advocate with nearly 2 decades of experience in education, counseling, and community advocacy. I can tell you that I know a little bit about her community advocacy because we're both here in Philadelphia, Esther and I've had an opportunity to participate in some of the advocacy work that she's done. As the founder of the Chinese Immigrant Families Wellness Initiative at the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, she has been dedicated to breaking barriers to mental wellness in Asian immigrant communities. And as I said a little bit earlier, we've heard some great talks from her about this. In addition to her community work, Dr. Castillo brings over a decade of experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI matters at various levels of government, philanthropy, and nonprofits. With a PhD in sociology, she specializes in survey development and conducts nuanced qualitative and quantitative analysis. Her true strength lies in driving impactful systemic change through narrative change efforts and community engagement strategies, particularly excelling in engaging diverse communities, including immigrants and BIPOC people. As the CEO of Bridging Worlds Consulting, Dr. Castillo leads a consulting firm dedicated to providing customized DEI training and services for nonprofits, public institutions, and philosophies. And throughout today's webinar, I'm going to insert Dr. Castillo's contact information if you would like to reach out to her to consider having her speak for any of your groups. I'm going to ask you all to please post your questions in the Q&A, and feel free to use the chat for any comments or thoughts that you might have, or the Q&A. I will warn you now that because this is a 2-part, we are expecting to answer most of your questions in part 2, just a few today, but more in part 2. So please leave them because that'll become part of our next webinar with Dr. Castillo. And I am at this point going to turn it over to my friend Esther, and she's going to start her PowerPoint presentation with us. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Jamal. And hi, everybody. I'm still reading the chat. This is like just going so quickly and seeing so many body from like different places all over Pennsylvania. And earlier, before the webinar started, I talked to Nancy and Jamal how I'm stuck in Dallas in a hotel room because I missed a flight yesterday. So it's a little bit of a special situation for me, but I'm so glad that everything turned out okay. Somehow my partner got his laptop, computer, the charger is there with us, not with the luggage. You know, everything just worked out so I can be with you all today. So today's webinar, we're gonna talk about, hold on, I'm sharing my screen. Can you all see it? I need to move it back to the first slide. Okay.
Yeah, we can see
You all
it.
see it? Okay.
We can
All
see
right.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So today we're gonna talk about racial healing with mindfulness. Is something new that I have been wanting to try. I have been to a lot of implicit bias trainings. Sometimes some of them are helpful, some of them are not so helpful. And I have also been on my own journey of racial healing, and I've personally and also in my community work found that mindfulness is really, really, really helpful for my own healing and for community healing. So this is the first time I do something like that in a webinar setting. I don't know how exactly it's gonna go, but I also feel extremely excited because this has been something that I have always wanted to do for a long time now. I wanted to talk about implicit bias in a way that is healing centered, that is not only centering on people's trauma, so we can take away with us, I wouldn't say positive energy, but then more so of a new depth of understanding of ourselves and how we can better approach this work. So today's agenda, we're gonna first talk about what mindfulness is, and then we're gonna talk about implicit bias. We're also gonna have some time to do some reflection on our own, and we're gonna wrap up with some discussion around identities and differences. So before I talk about what mindfulness is to me personally, when I'm practicing it, I wanna share a story. I always love to share a story. I think that's the best way for people to remember something is to tell a story. So I wanted to tell a story about my 7-year-old daughter. By the way, she's turning 8 in April. This is a picture that was taken about 2 years ago. So I think in this picture, she was about 5. I just shared that I got stuck in Dallas. Actually, like this picture was taken in San Diego, and that was the last time before this time that we went to San Diego for my stepson. I have a 25-year-old stepson. He moved to San Diego 2 years ago because he got a job there. And we went on a cross-country road trip. And that was my first cross-country road trip. We had a lot of fun. We drove all the way from Philadelphia all the way to San Diego. We gifted him the car and then we flew back to Philly. So this photo was taken in San Diego when we first arrived in San Diego. And I remember my daughter's, her name's Teresa, and Teresa was very grumpy. I forgot why, but she was a 5-6 years old. So I remember there was a discussion about her negotiating. She said she wanted to be carried into the restaurant. We were going into a Japanese restaurant to eat. It was either she didn't want to eat Japanese food, she didn't want to be there, or she wanted to be carried by me or by her dad or something like that. And then she was throwing a big tantrum right in front of the Japanese restaurant. It was like a hibachi place, I remember. It was crowded. And she was throwing a tantrum and she was lying on the floor. and she refused to get up. And even when we try to like hold her up, like she would like push us away. And then interestingly, there was this little garden with like bamboos and rocks. It was like a Zen garden right outside of this hibachi restaurant. And then I led her there and I told my family, why don't you just start eating? I'll like deal with this. And then she started, she like I pointed at the rocks and in the garden, and I was like, why don't we start stacking up these rocks? And then she got really into it. And as you can see in this photo, she didn't look grumpy at all. She was not throwing a tantrum, and she just calmed down. She was so focused on building this thing that she wanted to build on the table. And she was really proud of her creation. And the picture on the right was after she built the stone, stacking the stone, that structure. And we had dinner, we had a great time, and she was all happy again. So I wanted to tell that story to talk about how stress can create responses such as fight, flight, and freeze. Some of you might have heard of trauma response, which is very similar, but trauma is more toxic and stress is can be bad or good. But for her at that moment 2 years ago, when she was throwing a tantrum, she was definitely fighting me. There was a lot of yelling, there was a lot of screaming, kicking, lying on the floor, like just really really difficult. I think anyone who have young kids or who have had young kids would understand that. So these kind of responses are very common for kids when they're under stress, the fight, flight, and freeze. So flight can look like escaping, running away, or freezing. And at that time, she was really fighting me. And I wanted to talk about what mindfulness does to our brain. Before I talk about what mindfulness is. So if you look at this picture of the brain, you see that there are 3 parts: the brain stem, the limbic area, and also the cortex and prefrontal cortex. And as you can see in the image, it says that the infant's brain develops from the bottom up. So being so young that she was, and actually the human brain, if I remember it correctly, it doesn't get developed fully until like the age of 25 or something like that. So so she's still young. She's like 7 years old now. So her brain is literally not fully developed. And so during stress, it is the green area that got activated, right? So it was her amygdala, which acts like a smoke detector. And with the hippocampus connecting the lower and upper parts of the brain. Some people call it like the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. The downstairs brain is sort of like the smoke detector. It detects dangers, you know, and if you see a lion running towards you, that's the green area that's gonna light up, right? And the blue area is the upstairs brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is the ability for us to think, to reflect, to use reasoning. And sometimes when we're in danger, and if literally a lion is running towards you, you can't really use that part. That's the blue part, the upstairs brain, because it got shut down during moments of danger. In our modern world, we might not have a lion chasing after us. I hope not. But then sometimes like stress, like work, or even like chronic stress, like racism. There has been increasing research that shows that racism could cause like historical trauma and racial trauma. And sometimes trauma can make our brain get stuck in the downstairs brain. So we cannot really access our prefrontal cortex and our ability to pause and to think. So going back to my daughter's story about how she was throwing a tantrum, at that time, her brain was really stuck in the downstairs brain. and she couldn't really access her upstairs brain. So when she started stacking up the rocks, you know, and sometimes counselors would call it like grounding exercise, you know, right? Really connect to the immediate environment, is really an attempt, you know, for me to help her access her upstairs brain, and that's how she started to calm down. And mindfulness is really helping us to access our upstairs brain, so we can pause, we can reflect, and we can reason. And there are many different definitions of mindfulness. One of my favorite one is paying attention to the present moment without judgment. Growing up, I had a lot of judgment about myself, about the world. I think so are most people. When we are young, our parents or our teacher will tell us what is good, what is bad, what is neutral. So it is natural for our brain to cling on to those judgments. And mindfulness is really to move away from that judgment and really focus on the present moment. It could look like meditation, but it doesn't have to be meditation. It could be as simple as brushing your teeth, and really focusing on the sensation, the toothbrush, and the sensation that your teeth have, like that when you're brushing your teeth. It could be drinking your cup of coffee mindfully, meaning that you are really tasting the coffee and tasting the sensation of the coffee touching your tongue and then going into your body. So it doesn't have to be, you don't need music. You could use music. You don't need a group of people. You don't need a yoga mat. You could do it right now. You could have both of your feet touching the ground, and I invite you to try that, and to feel both of your feet touching the ground and how your body is connected to your immediate environment. And when you do that, what it does is that you are accessing the upstairs brain through being non-judgmental. You're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about what you need to do next. You're not thinking about what happened yesterday, right? I told you this story that I got stuck in the airport and all that. I'm not like, when I'm being mindful, I'm not thinking about all that. I'm not thinking about the regret. Oh, I should have checked the gate earlier, and that, like, those kind of thoughts are not me like sticking in the past. I'm not thinking about, oh, I have to, you know, make sure I catch the flight today. And even when I'm saying it, I can feel like my heartbeat is racing faster, just thinking about, oh, I need to catch this flight. Oh, I shouldn't have missed the flight, and da da da. And I can feel my body has a different reaction to it. But mindfulness is really focusing on our body and focusing on the present moment without any judgment. And we can all practice mindfulness. We can notice when judgments arise, witness whatever comes up in the body or mind in conjunction with judgment. Because people can have emotions, and they can have secondary emotions to an emotions, right? I could feel, I'm just trying to give an example. I could feel like, okay, I can feel really anxious about, okay, I need to catch this flight and to come back to Philly. I cannot miss my flight again. And then I can be like, oh, but I should be more mindful. I should not feel anxious. I hate my anxiety. I need to push away my anxiety. Why do I have these thoughts? I should not think like that. That's why I have anxiety. Like that internal conversation that I just had with myself created even more emotions. That not only I feel anxious about catching my flight, then now I feel guilty for feeling anxious about catching my flight, right? Oops. Can you still see my screen? Okay. Okay, sorry. Something popped up in my computer. And so mindfulness really is like noticing when those judgments arise. And instead of pushing away those judgments, you notice them. Like a friend who visited you at your house. And you say, hi, I see that you are there. And that's it. And that's okay. And you recognize that thoughts that are there without denouncing the thoughts or without clinging to the thought. And I've been practicing mindfulness for since COVID, so about 2 or 3 years. And it gets really hard in the beginning because I did notice that my brain and my mind has a lot of racing thoughts that I just can't seem to control. But I want to say that the more we practice, the easier it is to be connected to the present moment. And then we move forward with clarity is the third step. We stay present to the experience at hand and we accept it instead of pushing it away. And so I want to move to talking about race. And this is not a question for those who already know me. And for those who don't know me, by just looking at and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to ask that I asked this question. There's a reason to that. You're going to find out later. But we're going to switch gear a little bit to talk about race. So I want you to put in the chat, and I would not be offended. That's okay. And because that's how race is how other people see you. It's not what I identify. I'm going to repeat, race is how other people see me, but not how I identify myself, unlike ethnicity. Okay, I don't get to choose my race. Nobody get to choose their race. So my question is, what am I to you? What is my race? So I see people Asian, Asian American, Asian, Korean, human, Asian. Some people say Latino, Asian, right? So we don't get to choose our race is my point. And some people guessed my ethnicity, right? Just so you know, I'm not Korean and also not Filipino. I'm actually biracial. And I'm going to talk about why I want to talk about race in that way, because we could pretend that race doesn't exist, but the reality is that when we walk out in this world, we see race everywhere because this country and this society is so racialized. It might not matter to me, it might not matter to you, but there are systemic impacts based on people's race. And we're going to talk about that in part 2. And I think the first step is to accept, right? If you have this judgment in your, like now we go back to mindfulness very soon, okay? If you did notice that you feel a certain way, I want to invite you to stay at the present moment with me and to notice these judgments that arise as we talk about this really difficult topic, right? And my race is I am Nicaraguan and Chinese. This is my Nicaraguan family. You're seeing pictures of my grandmother. The picture in the middle is my dad's photo. The picture on the top right is a recent photo of my family. And then the picture on the right, like at the bottom, was an old photo that we found, I don't know, like a couple months ago in the family house. So I am also Chinese. I grew up in Macau, which was a Portuguese colony for over 500 years. I came to the United States when I was 19 years old. So I identify both as Chinese and Nicaraguan and an immigrant because I came to the United States when I was 19 years old. I can speak Cantonese and Mandarin. I don't speak Spanish because I wonder if there's a reason why people call it mother tongue, because I just naturally picked up my mother's language instead of my dad's language. On the other hand, my cousin who grew up with my grandmother, he speaks Spanish, but not Chinese. So we're a very mixed family. But usually because I am Asian presenting. I say presenting because like when you look at my face, usually you see Asian first. And for longest time, I have been like perming my hair straight, and then I wish I could show you other picture because like folks who are multiracial can like look very racially ambiguous depending on, you know, their skin color. Like my skin color changed based on the season. Like I'm literally like much darker during summer, and then winter I'm like much lighter. And I could make my hair curlier than this, or I can straighten my hair, and then people would like see me differently. And even when I go to Asia, like if I straighten my hair, people will start talking to me in Chinese. And if I just have my natural hair out, people would think that I am a foreigner. That's just how people are, whether we choose, whether whatever emotions we feel about race is just, you know, the reality of our society. And I want to assure and say that we all hold implicit biases and beliefs about various social groups and identity groups, whether we choose to or not. And I want to say I also hold implicit bias. Everybody does. It's just what humans does. I remember some of you said that we're just humans. As humans, we all have implicit biases because implicit biases help us understand the world easier. And there are certain functions to implicit bias, which I'm going to talk about it. So it's not always bad. Like implicit bias is not a bad thing. I can give you an example. For example, if you have like a peach allergy, and when you were little, you ate peach and you had a huge allergic reaction to it. And next time you see a peach or a peach looking fruit, your brain might send an implicit bias signal to you and say that, oh, this thing looked like a peach. Don't eat that because you're going to get really allergic to it. Like danger, 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 danger. That's when the downstairs brain get activated. Does it make sense? Like, so it's like the smoke detector telling you that do not eat this peach looking fruit because it's dangerous to you. That's what implicit bias is. And it's really helpful because maybe you really should not eat that fruit because it might kill you, or you might get a severe allergic reaction to it. So I'm just saying that it's just what the brain does. So I want to invite you to pause and practice a little bit of what we talk about with mindfulness for a moment. And I want you to think about what emotions do you feel about what I just shared, about race, about implicit bias, and about my racial identity. Do you feel discomfort? Do you feel like you want to push this away? Do you feel embarrassed? Do you feel painful because maybe you are also a biracial person or a mixed race person, that you don't see your racial identity being seen and honored and valued? Are there memories that come up for you? Did you feel a little bit unease? I also want to say that folks often feel very emotional and uncomfortable when talking about race. It's very common. I want you to start noticing your body. Like, do you feel any tenseness in the shoulder, or maybe you're not used to talking about race. Maybe you feel indifferent. You feel numbed, like you don't think like, oh, this doesn't really concern me. It's hard for you to tap in to your emotions, or it's not easy for you to relate. I see some people feel very comfortable, and then others not so much. Some folks said that they feel uncomfortable. Some folks feel reluctant, just like reading off the chat. Some people feel sad. And I see like folks who, like, I really want you to try to tap into what you feel instead of what you think, because feelings are not thoughts. They're different. feelings are more primal, and it has to do with the immediate reaction to the brain. I really want to invite you to share a moment of mindfulness and just sit with whatever feeling that you're feeling. And if you cannot access your feeling, right? Sometimes it's hard for us to get in touch with our feelings because we're not used to it, especially in modern life, right? When we go from doing one thing to another thing, it's very hard for us to focus on our body and our emotions. And so I want you to really take some moments for yourself, and also offer yourself some compassion. If you find it hard to relate to, if you find it hard to access those feelings, and you notice a judgment, like, why can't I feel those feelings? Like, welcome them and say that, hey, I see you and I accept you, and I want to offer compassion to you. And if you feel a strong sense of feeling, maybe you feel angry, you feel pain, especially if you're a person of color, because we experience racism in this world despite differently. And I will also want you to offer compassion for yourself. I see some folks say that, like I see some folks say that, okay, you're dark-skinned Black woman, you don't get to be racially ambiguous, right? You don't get to choose. And that might have other meaning for you and the kind of feelings that you have. And I want you to, if you can, read this statement out loud, that this is a moment of racial discomfort, something we often face in the world shaped by racism, and I deserve kindness now, and I'll give it to others who are impacted by this moment as well. And I want to invite you to say that to yourself. And then I'm gonna move to implicit bias. And I want to share another story before I talk about what implicit bias. I talked a little bit of using the fruit example, but I want to share a different story. This is a picture of me and my best friend. Her name's Mary. During COVID, we shared the same roof. We were a multi-family household. She and her son Rasir moved into our house. She was experiencing some housing instability, so I invited her to live with us, and then we lived together. It was not easy. It was not easy to live with anybody, including my daughter and my husband, during COVID, because we were just all stuck in the same house all day long. So I wanted to share this story of when she first moved in. And we live in a 3-story house in South Philly. And then she moved in a 3rd floor, and my bedroom was on the 2nd floor. I remember one day, I think it was the first week when she and Rasir moved in, she was playing her music, and I think I was working at that time, and then I thought that the music was too loud for me because I really wanted to focus on work or something else. And then I had this thought in my brain. in my mind that says, oh my God, Black people are so loud. And I kind of like roll my eyes in my office. And then I caught myself in that moment. I was like, whoa, what just showed up in my mind? What did I just think? And mind you, like I am a DEI practitioner, I'm a sociologist, I have devoted most of my career in social justice. And that was what happened to me in my brain when I was annoyed by my best friend. And I just want to be real with you all. Like, I want to show you the vulnerable side of me, because I want to show you that we all have biases. No one, like, because the biases is in our mind, we don't have a choice. And then I got really curious about, why would I think that? That's so, like, no, like, not me. Like, why would I think that? And then I got a little bit curious of this thought that I had. Instead of like pushing it away, I got pretty curious of like, why would I have that thought in my head? Like, that's not, I feel ashamed. Like, as I talk, like, I feel like I'm shaking a little bit, because it's not something I feel proud of, you know, and yet I want to show it to you. I want to say it to you, because I want to tell you that we all have these biases, right? So I got curious and think of, where did my anti-Black thoughts come from? And being trained as a sociologist, I know where it came from. It came from our cultural history. It came from this painful history of anti-Blackness and misogynoir images that we still get bombarded every day in, day out. I know we're trying to do better, but it's still hard. Okay. So I want to show you a little video. I'm not going to show the whole. Oh, misogynoir means like misogyny against Black women. So it's the intersection of, you know, sexism and racism that that Black women experience. And I'm going to show you this video. I'm not going to show it all, but it talks a little bit about the stereotypes of Black women in media, and it kind of addresses why I had this thought about my best friend, which I'm still like surprised by myself, so I just want to invite you all to think about it. Got to get out.
The Mammy. You tell me what you want done, and I'll do the hell out of it. The Jezebel. Shut up. And the Sapphire. Submissive, sexy, sassy. 3 stereotypes of Black women that return to our screens over and over again.
The Mammy is probably the most familiar to people. It's usually a maid, heavy, taking care of the family.
He was kind. He was small. He is now what?
She is asexual. She doesn't have really a life of her own. She's really only there to support the family.
And probably one of the most famous examples is Mammy from Gone with the Wind.
Just hold on and suck it.
Somebody who is always seeking out to put aside her own desires, her own needs for white families, white men, white women, white children.
Meet Sugar Hill, sexiest, deadliest chick in town.
The second stereotype is the Jezebel, and that's someone who is generally oversexed. Her only power is in her body and in the influence she has over men. And then finally, the Sapphire character, I think that's seen in TV more often than anything else.
Get some Kleenex, wipe your nose, cause it ain't that damn sad.
The Sapphire is usually sharp-tongued, manipulative woman who emasculates her husband.
There was actually a character called Sapphire Stevens on the Amazon Andy show.
And I guess you think you could cook, clean, and get along just fine all by yourself.
the representation of the angry Black women. And that's kind of metamorphosized to today, where we just have sassy, angry Black women who doesn't take anything from anybody.
Caricatures of Black women have been around in Western culture for centuries. They're rooted in the transatlantic slave trade, when stereotypes were used to commodify Black bodies and justify slavery. These characters were popularized in what Americans called minstrel shows, comedic performances in which white actors, in blackface, lampooned Black people just to entertain other whites. By the early 1900s, minstrel shows were fading in popularity, but the stereotypes endured. They made the jump to film, then electronic media, and they have survived to this day.
Throughout history, more often than not, Black women are depicted in reductive ways that denies the different experiences and emotions that are a part of their life.
Aunt Jemima. Perfect pancakes in 10 shakes.
Depictions of Black women in the media throughout time have been used to put forward ultimately oppressive ideologies.
Generalizations are useful, I constantly say this, but they're also shortcuts. And it feeds into our own racist imagination. And we miss the realities, the full depth of Black women's stories. Because you are essentializing Black people, you're saying there is no complexity beyond this. Well, it's going to be no surprise that the audience and the creators alike are going to constantly think that we have represented Black women in the way they are, when really what they've represented is just the same racist caricature over and over again.
Stereotypes like the Mammy, Jezebel, and Sapphire have, however, evolved over time, reinvented in characters like the welfare queen and the sassy Black friend.
Oh, you looking for a sassy Black friend? Oh, no, I didn't. Well, you got one now, girlfriend.
In the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests, there has been renewed pushback against this kind of racist imagery.
Look, 10 of Red Bull, yeah? Pour half away, or the rest up with vodka. That is me, sorted. These nails are digging in tonight.
I have ascribed to play the part of the welfare queen, and my mom is playing the mammy, and it's two like stereotypes together, with no like deep interrogation as to why.
It's £10 to get in and drinks cost a fortune.
We just like pop up as like best friends of like our white leads. I remember being on set and almost being asked to give us more sass, give us more attitude. I watched this back and I absolutely was complicit in the propaganda of the anti-Blackness.
Or the rest up with vodka.
I advocated anti-Black like rhetoric for the sake of capitalism and for the sake of a credit.
Cyrus.
For Black actors, caricatures are no longer the only parts out there. TV shows like Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, and Insecure feature layered Black women in their leading roles. But such complex, multidimensional characters are the exception, while stereotypes, or token Black roles, remain the rule. A fact that is at least partly explained by a lack of diversity behind the camera, at the writing desk, and in the director's chair.
One of the problems is that there just really aren't a lot of people of color who are making decisions, who are writing, who are producing, right? It's like no job, no man. All of this sounds bad, but it's actually really good. It's good vibes. So when you think about a show like Insecure on HBO, Issa Rae does that because she is a Black woman. She has Black writers, Black producers, and so she makes it her business to make sure that the full story is told, the complex parts. That's reality, and we just don't see a lot of that on TV or in film.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there, and I see a lot of discussion, and I would agree that this is a systemic issue, and that's why we cannot afford to say that, oh, I don't see colors like this, because we still live in a world that racial inequities exist, whether we like it or not. Like I don't like it, but I don't have a choice but to live in this system. And just like what I think Adriana mentioned, as actor of this of a show, or like we can expand it and say as actor in this society, we either can choose to play our parts or not play our parts, and sometimes we feel very limited. And I also want to say that like these stereotypes is so powerful, and they are everywhere, that they exist in children's books. And here I have a list of harmful stereotypes that still exist in children's books today. And I want you to take a look at this list. And if you feel compelled to maybe share with us which ones or which one stood out the most to you, or it elicited some reactions or emotions in you. Are you surprised by it? How do you feel about that? This list, I got it from the Social Justice Book Projects, which compile children books and do research on them and see what some of the stereotypes are prevalent. And we're gonna just take a moment so you can read through them. And if you want to educate yourself, there are a lot of studies that are done to show that this is true. And I see Mila talked about Disney movies, which is also true.
Esther, I'm not seeing a list of books on my screen. Is that what I should be seeing?
It's a list of stereotypes that
List of
are
stereotypes.
found in
Okay,
children's
thank you.
books. Mhm. Thank you for those who are sharing with us. And some of them you might agree with and not agree with. I'm not saying that we have to agree with these. These are facts, and it might be hard to accept because you might feel a certain way about it. And I'm showing this to say that whether we choose to or not, this is systemic. Just like the Black women stereotypes in the video that was just discussed. We don't get to choose it. Yes, like Colleen said, is ingrained at a very early age. And so I want to, again, invite all of us to take a moment of mindfulness. And I like to invite you to tap into your emotions instead of your intellect, right? Because I feel like a lot of us here are very used to tap into our intellect, right? To make an argument. I really want you to do some reflection on your own instead of arguing for a point. I want you to tap into internally and get really curious about what emotions that show up for you. And if there are any memories or thoughts that come rushing into your mind, or you find it hard to think, like I also want you to pay attention to your body, any tenseness around the shoulders, the neck. Do you feel lightheaded? Did you have any reactions, either bodily? Do you feel any pressure in the chest? Do you find it hard to swallow? I see numb, sadness, hurt, tense, frustration, stomach upsets, just really tense, disappointment and anger. And I want you to take a moment to be friends with these emotions. Instead of trying to push it away, notice them with no judgment. Or maybe you're on the other hand, you feel indifferent, you feel numb, you feel cynical. I still want you to accept them. There is no one way to feel about it. And I want to invite you to pause for compassion. And if you remember the quote from before, I just also want to invite to say that this is a moment of racial tension. And I want you to offer yourself compassion. And if you can, I hope you can offer others compassion and empathy, whether you feel different or same. Okay. And thank you so much for taking a moment of mindfulness with me. And here is a very short video just to clarify what implicit bias is. And I'm going to share it in a moment.
Got it. But what is implicit bias? Implicit biases are basically thought processes that happen without you even knowing it. Little mental shortcuts that hold judgments you might not agree with. And sometimes the shortcuts are based on race. First, some clarity. Saying someone has an implicit bias is different from calling someone a racist.
The word racist is a highly loaded term, right, here in American society. A lot of times when people are using it, they're thinking of the kind of old-fashioned Ku Klux Klan style racism.
But implicit bias isn't anywhere near that, explicit.
Implicit bias is something that comes out of ordinary mental functioning, out of how the mind normally works.
We've all grown up in a culture with media images, news images, conversations we heard at home, our education. Think of that as a fog we've been breathing our whole life. We'd never even realized it, what we were taking in.
And that fog causes associations that lead to biases.
I somehow know that if you say peanut butter, I'm going to say jelly. That's an association that's been ingrained in me because throughout my life, peanut butter and jelly are together. And in many forms of media, there is an overrepresentation of Black men and violent crime being paired together.
And because of that, I actually deep down inside have been taught that Black men are violent and aggressive and not to be trusted, that they're criminals, that they're thugs.
With all those associations, I'm not trying to let us off the hook, but in some ways, none of us stood a chance.
Okay, and that's it. It's a short and simple video. Right. And I want to talk a little bit more about what stereotypes are. And if you have not seen the TED Talk by Chimamanda Adichie, I invite you to watch her TED Talk called "The Danger of a Single Story." So I'm just gonna quote her and say that the single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is that it's not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. So my story about my friend and how I thought that, oh, Black people was really loud. And there is a continuation of this story. And one day I sat her down and I said, oh, wow, I thought that about you. And then she disclosed to me, she said, you know what? Because when she first moved in, like Teresa was really young. Like she, those who know her, like she does this like fake crying, like crocodile tears. Like I don't know. Like as a mom, like I know like when she's fake crying when she was real crying. And I remember she told me the first night that she moved in to our house, Teresa was crying and I was ignoring her because she was fake crying. And I know that. And then when she's like real crying, like I go to her. And then she told me that in her head, she said, oh my God, these Asians are really tiger moms, aren't they? And we both laughed out loud. We were like, what? You think that of me? It's like we were like joking around. And then she was saying that, yeah, because like, I don't know, I like have never lived with an Asian family in my life. So I don't know what the family dynamics are. And then that was the first thing I thought of. And then we kind of talk to each other and wonder what those stories came from. It's from the single story, those stereotypes that we learned. And even though we are friends, and at those moments, it didn't seem to click to our brain immediately. And so based on these conversation, we thought we needed to do something about it. And we didn't stop there. Our family grew closer and closer together. And me being a community organizer, her being an activist, we got really invested in cultivating Black and Asian solidarity. And we worked together very closely, and we started inviting our friends, our communities members, you know, to meet. So that picture, well, the picture on the left is like both of our families, as you can see. And then the picture at the bottom with a group of Black and Asian folks and mixed race folks, you know, sitting together. We started hosting this luncheon monthly where we would just invite our friends and community members from, you know, the Asian and the Black communities, and we would like just eat and talk and develop friendships. The truth is that, well, I live in Philly. Philly is one of the most segregated cities in the United States. And even though we try, it is very hard to beat the system, to extend your friendship elsewhere. And then so we started with these luncheons, like every single month we would alternate, we would go to an Asian-owned business, then a Black-owned business, Asian-owned business, and a Black-owned business. We would have like these group gathering. And I think it was like 2 years ago, we threw one of the, if not the biggest, one of the biggest Black and Asian joy party in Philly. And if you know Philly, like we did it at the Rec Center in the Fashion District. It went on TV. It was an amazing event. And to this day, we continue to be committed to our friendship and our commitment to develop more understanding, compassion, and solidarity between our communities. So I'm saying that like it all started with these personal thoughts, and because we were open enough to share that with one another, and we decided that we wanted to do something about it. And I want to take a moment because I know a lot of people started talking about systemic racism, especially after 2020. One thing that I learned as a DI practitioner and as a community organizer is that, and also as a DI practitioner working within systems, what I noticed is that systems are made up of people. And of course, I'm not saying that it's easily done, but if we want to change the system, we really, really need to look into the mirror and turn inward to ask ourselves questions of how we can change things the way it is. Because the way it is that there are a lot of inequalities that are shaped by race and racism. And if you don't want our children to continue to absorb these messages, whether they want to or not, and the next generation to absorb these toxic messages, then we really need to change something. And what's a better thing to change than to start with ourselves? And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's so hard. And I really want to take about 5 minutes now. And I'm going to read out these questions. Of course, you can read it on your own too. And I really, if you can, take out a sheet of paper and write down your answer and be really honest with yourself. You don't need to share your answer, but if you cannot be honest with yourself, then you cannot start the process, because it started for me when I was honest about my own biases. And when I offer myself compassion that I'm not a perfect human being. I have these biases that live inside me, in my body, in my mind. So this is a set of questions that allow us to reflect on our own life. So I'm just going to read out loud. How often do you engage in social activities or events hosted by cultural or racial communities different from your own? And again, you don't need to share it. If you have a sheet of paper in front of you, write it down on your own. And if not, answer it for yourselves. When choosing healthcare providers, such as dentists, doctors, etc., how often you opt for establishments owned or operated by people of color? When seeking professional services such as legal assistance or financial advice, how often do you intentionally choose providers from diverse racial backgrounds? How frequently do you dine at restaurants owned by individuals of a different racial backgrounds than your own? When selecting educational or learning opportunities such as workshops, seminars, or classes, how often do you choose those led by instructors from diverse racial backgrounds? And again, I ask all these questions not to shame anybody, or this is not a competition, right? This is a moment for us to be honest with ourselves. And it could be challenging depending on where you live also, right? But this is just an invitation for us to be honest about how diverse our lives are. When seeking out entertainment such as movies, music, literature, how often do you explore works created by artists or creators from different racial backgrounds. Reflecting on your childhood and upbringing, how diverse were the schools or educational institutions you attended in terms of student body composition, or maybe even teachers' composition. And again, you don't need to share. If you want to share, fine. But really the number one thing I want you to do is to be honest with yourself. How often do you actively engage in conversations or discuss about racial diversity, equity, inclusion within your social circles or communities? When traveling or vacationing, how often do you visit destinations where the local population predominantly consists of individuals from racial backgrounds different from your own? And how frequently do you financially support businesses owned by people of color or individuals from different racial backgrounds through your purchasing decisions? And if you have not been thinking too much about this, I want to invite you to start maybe noticing how you make your daily choices. I started, I think, like last month, just as an exercise, I tried to go to only Black-owned business or restaurants. It's not that easy. I literally have to like Google and find out, because you don't often find out who owns the restaurants. And so like some of these restaurants might not be close to where I live. I'm just saying that it's not always easy. When it comes to like dentists and doctors, like I never really think about it. And really, this set of questions is not to make you feel like, oh, guilty or shame. It's more so that you start to develop a sense of mindfulness and ask yourself how inequalities show up in your daily life and how systemic inequities show up in our daily life. And so I'm going to move to the next slide. And again, I want to spend some time to, sorry, hold on a second, for you to answer these questions. And again, this is not a competition, okay? And this is a moment for us to be honest with ourselves. So feel free, this is an exercise for ourselves, not for other. This is not a performance. And if certain feelings show up like in reaction to what you're experiencing right now, I want you to investigate and get curious with those emotions. We live in such a world that has so many judgments, so much competition, so much desire to compete and perform. You know, sometimes we forget about ourselves. And yes, it is a very sensitive topic, right? And that's why most people shy away from it. And I honestly feel nervous leading this workshop because of how race could be very emotional and hard to talk about, right? But we cannot address and change things that we refuse to think about, that we refuse to feel, that we refuse to talk about. We can no longer live in denial. We have to be honest with ourselves. If we want to be honest with other people, we have to first be honest with ourselves. If we want to offer compassion to other people, we have to offer compassion to ourselves. And again, those questions are meant for us to get curious. Is not, I'm not offering a solution. I'm not saying that from now on you have to curate your life in a certain way. It's just a list of questions that we might have never asked ourselves. Again, I'm not saying you should do this, do that. There's no judgment. This workshop, we call it mindfulness because the number one thing that I hope we all can start to practice is mindfulness. Remember, we go back to that story of I started this training about my young daughter having a stress response. And so how mindfulness really help us pause and reflect. Okay. And I want to have us do a 2-minute body scan. For those of you who are familiar with meditation, that might be something that you have done before. If this is the first time you do it, feel free to engage. It's just 2 minutes. I'm gonna play the audio, and the body scan is really for us to connect our mind to our body. Because sometimes when we feel stressed, we forgot about our body.
Let's begin our body scan by focusing your attention on your toes. Do they feel warm or cold? Releasing any physical tension you might be holding as you move up your lower legs, through your knees, your thighs. Noticing the feeling of the floor or chair. And then resting your attention onto your lower back. Simply noticing what's there. And then around to your stomach. You notice the movement of your body and your stomach as you breathe in and breathe out. So moving your attention now up to your rib cage and your chest. Focusing in here on what you can notice. So moving up to your shoulders, your shoulder blades. Taking a moment to allow them to completely relax. We're moving up to scanning our jaw, our chin, allowing them to completely relax and hang free. In your nose, can you feel the air moving in and out of your nose as you breathe? And then around your eyes, allowing your eyes and eyelids to completely relax. Seeing if you can notice the very top point of your head. And then when you're ready, open your eyes. This mindful moment is taken from our app, the Pocket Mentor.
So if you're ready, you can open your eyes, or if you didn't close your eyes, that's fine too, and come back to this training slowly. If this is the first time you have done this, you might feel a little uneasy. If you're used to doing it, you might feel some sensation moving in your body. And I just now felt a lot of tension in my jaw. I felt like I sense some fear in my body. Again, like I said, this is a very sensitive topic. It's uneasy for you, it's uneasy for me. And so I want to offer kindness to myself as I engage. And I also want to offer kindness to everybody in this room. And so
let's begin our body scan.
This. And we're going to move to the last part, which is so short. I just want to talk about identity and differences. I know that in this training, we're focusing on racial identities, but there are also other identities that are historically dominant and also historically marginalized. And I want to really focus on the word historical. Again, we don't get to choose these things. We are living in this world shaped by our ancestors. And we don't get to choose any of this. So some historically dominant identities in the United States are white, man, non-disabled, neurotypical, heterosexual, cisgender, native-born, citizen, wealthy, Christian. And most people fall into at least one of these categories, including myself. I see myself as neurotypical. I'm cisgender. I am a citizen. And historically marginalized identities are on the right. Black, Latina, Latino, Latinx, Asian, Indigenous, mixed women, non-binary, disabled, autistic, neurodivergent, LGBTQ+, immigrant, undocumented, poor, Muslim, Jewish. And this is not an exhaustive list, right? But I just want to show people that most of us also fall into at least one of these categories. And identities are important because inequities exist. They didn't disappear from our society, at least not yet. And at the same time, all of us are more than our identities, right? I hear people say, I'm a human being, right? We're more than our identities. We're more complex, right? I'm not just an Asian woman. I am a mother, I'm a daughter, I am an important member of my family and in my community, right? We're more than that. But at the same time, it is important that we recognize that the resources that we have in our lives are very much also shaped by these historical identities that we did not get to choose very often. Right. And then I want to end this workshop with this exercise. Just think about a person who has made you feel loved, cared for, maybe a family member, maybe someone who took care of you, a caregiver, or who have given you care when you were young, that made you feel nurtured. And I want you to extend a wish for well-being toward this person. And repeat the following. You can either say it out loud, or you can type it in the chat, or you can imagine this person in front of you. This person might be in your life, maybe they have passed, and you say this to this person: may you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free from suffering. Now offer those same wishes and phrases toward yourself. And if it helps, select an image of yourself at one point in your life, maybe when you were a child, maybe when you were a teenager, and maybe at a point of your life when you particularly needed a loving response, such as a moment of race-related injury. And I want you to say to this person, that's yourself, may you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free from suffering. And this is a quote that I really like: diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is the outcome. So by working on our own and our own racial healing, no matter what your racial identities are, you're taking action towards inclusion. And last but not least, before we open up to, if you have any questions or comments, I can answer. But before that, I just want to invite you to offer yourself a hug. This is not an easy workshop. You have taken the first step to be here with us. Again, it's very hard to be honest with ourselves, and race is very sensitive and hard to talk about. And it might make us feel all sorts of feelings. And I just want to validate your feeling. And we cannot extend love to other people and compassion to other people if we don't love ourselves and have compassion towards ourselves. So it's really important to start with ourselves. So I want to invite all of you to offer yourself a hug. And it's actually something that sometimes is helpful in counseling. And I do that a lot to my child too. I teach her, when you're feeling stressed, we live in such a society that ignore our body, right? It's like kind of silly, you're like hugging yourself, it's kind of childish, but it's okay. You deserve love, like we all deserve love. So that's all from me. And this QR code goes to my LinkedIn. If you would like to get in touch, you can connect with me through LinkedIn, or you can email me. My email is right there. And I am going to pass it back to Nancy and Jamal.
Thank you so much, Esther. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude and care for all that you've done for us today. And it has been an honor to have you. And I don't say that lightly. And there are so many people here who have been made to feel uncomfortable and realize that they're learning something, or made to feel even better about themselves because they are finding out that they do know a little something too. And it's a lovely balance. And I am certainly looking forward to having you back for part 2 to answer all the questions and comments that that we have in the chat, in the Q&A. And I'm asking everyone to please complete the evaluation. I'm going to put that link in again. And then ask Jamal, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. So ask Jamal to pick out maybe 1, maybe 2 questions for us.
We don't really have any questions that have been put into the Q&A, and I don't really think we have enough time to really delve into questions if there were, because a lot of them want to address certain things as a one of those things is that's been said in the comment a lot. People who say that they don't see color, things of that nature. So I think just for time's
Definitely
sake,
want to talk about that at
right?
part
Just
two,
for
right?
time's sake, I think it's one of those things that I think would be left better to have that conversation during the next.
May I ask Esther just one not so simple question that maybe she could answer for us quickly and then, go from there? I'm very curious about where your courage came to be able to do this with us today.
Thank you for asking this question. Like I shared with all of you, I feel quite nervous about doing a training like this because of how sensitive the topic is. But I've also been in a lot of other implicit bias training and other DEI training. And I noticed that people, regardless of their racial backgrounds, very often walk out of the traditional DEI training feeling triggered, hurt, or reactive. They either feel resistant or they want to push back on something, or they're in denial, or they don't feel seen, or they feel like they are burdened because of their personal experience. They feel like they needed to educate others about their personal experience, which could open up a lot of wounds and create this sense of woundedness for a lot of participants. And I really wanted to create something that do not perpetuate this sense of woundedness, but also to educate, right? It's not to like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to do it. Well, we cannot address things that we don't face. We have to face it. But how do we face it in such a way that is healing centered, that is loving and kind to ourselves and to others? And this is my attempt to really do this in a kind way and in a loving way that I think could bring a better impact. And for the next part, we're gonna delve into the systemic racism piece, which is often very controversial, even more controversial than we talked about today. Because today we didn't talk much, honestly. We didn't delve into all the inequalities that exist, right? And therefore, we didn't get to talk about why we need to see things as they are. Because I didn't get to do that part yet. But I would invite everybody to start practicing mindfulness in your daily life, and especially when it comes to moments related to race or racial injury or racial tension or racial discomfort, and be a little bit honest with yourself and show more compassion to yourself. And hopefully when we meet again in our next training, we'll start off from a place where people feel more resilient and ready to open themselves and to be vulnerable. Because it takes a lot of bravery to be vulnerable and to admit that we're not doing a good job, or like we have a lot of flaws and we make a lot of mistakes, and it's okay. And yeah, so that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. I think that there are probably some people who are in the webinar today who aren't used to what I normally do, which is within the next day or two, this recording of today's session will be available on our website, at which point I send an email to everyone who has attended or registered for this or the next one. And if you weren't able to be here today, you'll be able to watch part one and then participate in part two. And you will see that email coming out, like I said, within the next couple of days. And our part two is on April 11th. And I am thanking everyone for being here and participating. And Jamal, do you want to close us out?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to reiterate, Nancy had put it in the chat, but the chat was moving today, so a lot of people probably didn't see it. The PowerPoint will not be shared, but the video, like Nancy said, will be posted. So I encourage you to please share the video with those who you might want it to share the PowerPoint with. If you could share the video of the training, that would be great. With that, the next webinar will be part 2 on April 11th, 2024, beginning at noon. We'll go to 1:30. I'd like to thank Esther again for such a wonderful training, and thank you always to Nancy. And we hope to see you all on April 11th. Have a good day, everyone.
I just put Esther's email in the chat as it's racing along for anybody that wanted to reach out to her. And I'm going to strongly recommend that any group or organization that would like her to come in personally or virtually, please do, because she clearly has much to teach us. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Try to do something fun and light. This is
Okay.
Okay, do something fun and
Good
light
idea.
after this. Okay. All right.
Eat some ice cream.
That's what I was going to say. Ice
Yeah.
cream. Yes.
Or go for a walk. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Travel safe.
Thanks.